Welcome to Mobile, a football show, hot read podcast, and SEC football live extravaganza conglomeration. I am Braden Gall. That is JT Runke, of course, host of the Hot Read podcast, and of course, excellent writer and host here on Broadway Sports Media and 440 Sports. So for you SEC football fans that don't know him, he's wearing a South Carolina jacket in honor of family, right?
Yes, my brother's a senior at South Carolina, and that's the only SEC tie I really have.
Well, there you go. So we're gonna we're in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. So for those of you listening on the SEC feed, we do appreciate you guys. We got lots of stuff to discuss when it comes to Jalen Milroe, Jaxson Dart, Quinn Ewers, lots of defensive linemen from the SEC. Had a chance to chat with a couple of SEC coaches as well. So we've got lots of SEC football content for you here. But this is also a Titans program, a football show, and a hot read podcast. So we're going to talk a lot about the Titans' #1 pick. We're going to talk about storylines as it pertains to the positions of need for the Tennessee Titans a little bit later on in the show, of course. So we'll talk edge rushers, we'll talk wide receivers, we'll talk offensive line, maybe some sleepers. And, of course, you and I had a chance to chat with Titans GM Mike Borgonzi this week. Had some interesting things to say about trading back and, like, how you know when you got the right player. So sort of a mix and a blend of all things today on the show. So I hope you guys have fun. Make sure you turn the notifications on. If you're watching and you want to jump into the comments section, please do so. Thumbs up, notifications on, etc. And thanks to all of our great and amazing sponsors that allow us to be here, coming to you guys free from Mobile. Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages, up in Hendersonville. Been serving the Nashville community for 90 years, almost 90 years. 4-time liquor store of the year in East Nashville. Milroe. For those of you who listen to Hot Read Podcast and to SEC Football Live, you will know the name Milroe. Of course, 6 great locations all across Middle Tennessee, the best burgers and beer in the city. They take great care to make sure their taps are spectacular. We've been eating a lot of food down here, a lot of oysters, and the beer is just
We're up to 36, right?
36 oysters, which I think we can do better than that. We need to crush some more tonight.
We got to figure it out tonight.
We'll do better. We'll do better. We were like the quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl in day 1. We did much better in day 2, so we'll continue to do that. And so again, opening a 7th location, by the way, in East Nashville, also my neighborhood. So make sure you check out Milroe for those of you who are coming to town ever and you want to visit Milroe. And if you want the best brisket in the city, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. So all these restaurants working together to bring you this product for free. Locally owned businesses. All of these companies, locally owned businesses in Nashville, Tennessee. So make sure you support them. Again, if you want to jump into the comment section, please do so. We'll have chance and some time for your comments today. All right. So there you go. Sinkers Beverages, Milroe, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Super excited to be here after day number 2.
Yes.
JT.
It was quite an exciting one. I think yesterday, specifically with the quarterbacks, when you bring that up, was one of the biggest things on day 1. Rough is an understatement for those quarterbacks when coming into this. Jalen Milroe, Jaxson Dart, Tyler Shuck, the Canadian Cannon. I don't actually know how to pronounce his name, but I'm just going to go with that. Seth Hennigan, a lot of guys here that, very different than last year's Senior Bowl with, the type of talent you had. And so day 1 was really rough. Day 2 kind of got better with some of these quarterbacks, specifically the SEC ones. Jaxson Dart, had some good moments, but I think the biggest storyline today is that Milroe, man, woof, it's tough sledding out there for him.
So TCCAA, by the way, which quarterback has looked the best so far? We will get to that momentarily because I think it's a very clear answer, right? Through 2 days, don't you think?
I do,
okay,
yes.
So we'll get to that. Team Ramrod already starting us off here. Braden's guy Milroe, say it ain't so. Look, okay, so I'll take you on my journey here, which is
okay.
I thought that if Jalen Milroe landed in the right place, a la Jalen Hurts, with a team around him, a coach and a system that wanted to build around him, that I thought Jalen Milroe could be a very good NFL player. I think he can still be an NFL player and be an NFL starting quarterback. I think my opinion has changed in that I thought he was maybe QB1 late first, early second round because I'm not super high on Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I think my opinion on that has clearly changed through these 2 days of practice. And it's not just watching Milroe, it's also the conversations we've had with scouts and coaches that, like, the questions about whether or not he can hit those intermediate passing routes, the same questions we had with him at Alabama, explosive athlete. He's not as big, standing next to him and Jaxson Dart's bigger. Like, they're equal size, height-wise, but Jaxson Dart's a thicker, sturdier player than Jalen Milroe. I think he's got a chance, but he's definitely not QB1. He might not even be QB3 after Sanders and Ward. I think Jaxson Dart might be ahead of him, and we'll get to your question CA, about the best. I mean, I think Milroe's lost a lot of stock in the first 2 days of practice. We'll see what happens on Thursday, but right?
It's really tough for him. I mean, they gave him today a lot of time. Milroe on specifically the 11-on-11 portion of today, a lot of reps for Jalen Milroe, and it was all not very good, which is not great considering that yesterday in the one-on-ones when he's throwing to receivers versus one cornerback, he did not even complete a pass, which I think was pretty crazy. But you just look at
not good.
You look at what he did in today's practice. A lot of pressure from the edge rushers, which we'll talk about too. A lot of good SEC edge rushers as well today, going up against some maybe questionable LSU offensive tackle talent. But that's not here nor there. The main point, Jalen Milroe struggled to kind of know when to dip out of a pocket, know when to stay in, and when he did, he was getting basically sacked and then would throw the ball. And there was one really bad interception that Jalen Milroe had today in on an exact situation like that. And so the pocket presence was just not there for him. Like you said, the ability to make those intermediate throws and kind of use more than just his legs, I think, is still a concern here when you're going up against, maybe not even some of the best competition that Jalen Milroe has faced in his career at Alabama.
And again, I will admit, I thought there was a chance through this process that he could work his way into the first round as a conversation, because again, I mean, I think he's a little bit bigger than Michael Vick, but he's the closest thing I've seen to a Michael Vick type of player, with the first 3 steps acceleration being the best I've seen in 20 years in college football. Big arm, good kid, smart kid, like lots of winning. All the issues we saw in college seem to be the issues now, and certainly pocket presence is a major problem. So I don't know. I think, is he QB4? Is he QB5? QB3? Look, again, Cam and Shador are 1 and 2.
Yes.
In your mileage may vary on where they rank in the first round or who you like better. But where is Milroe on your board if you're talking quarterbacks?
Right now, I think, I think the discussion for QB3 probably falls on Jaxson Dart or Quinn Ewers right now. So certainly I think he's behind both of those two. So around quarterback 5, I think right now when you look at a guy like Jalen Milroe, his stock for me at this moment is maybe late day 2, early day 3.
Round 3.
Round
4. Okay.
3, 4. I mean, that's kind of the same thing we saw last year with these kind of guys who are traitsy, but have not been able to put it together. Spencer Rattler is one of those guys who I thought could have had a chance to go on day 2. He doesn't end up going until the 5th.
Guy.
Yeah, he's my guy.
South Carolina
on right now. The agenda is alive and well with Spencer Rattler, but
he's got a good arm.
He didn't go until, he was the next quarterback off the board, and he didn't go until the 5th round. So, could we see another situation like where we see maybe the top 3, whoever your 3rd wants to be, either Jaxson Dart or Quinn Ewers, go in day 1 and day 2, and then we don't see another quarterback until day 3? I think it's very possible right now with this quarterback class.
I do think the class is going to be very like, what's your taste? Like, yes. Beauty's the eye of the beholder. Like, I think somebody's going to like Quinn Ewers, and we can talk about this now, because I think Jaxson Dart there's clearly a lot of people around Jaxson Dart that are pushing him from a quality standpoint. Certainly, we have lots of questions about running the Lane Kiffin offense, taking snaps under center, pro-style reads, all that stuff. He's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of ability. The thing that has stood out to me sort of being around him, and now I do think, I don't want to say emotional is the right word, but I do think he sort of plays with his heart on his sleeve, and Titans fans know all about that with Will Levis. So there's a little bit of that maybe that you want to get to know. But I think, 6'1", not ideal, but he can move a little bit. He's not an explosive athlete, but he can move a little bit. I think he's what I noticed about being around them is how much thicker he is, especially in the lower body, where if you're going to take hits and you're going to be a little shorter, you need to be able to manage those hits in the pocket in the NFL. So I do think Jaxson Dart has a very real chance to make a roster. I have a very real chance to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I don't know if he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't know. So to your point about the gap, is that gap going to be filled by Quinn Ewers moving up boards through this process? Because I think right now I would probably have Quinn Ewers as my number 3 quarterback. I think
it's definitely a discussion. just based on how much Quinn Ewers has played, I think he checks those boxes to say that you may have seen enough that you can work with him, and that gives him the QB3 slot. But like you said, it's your flavor right now, and certainly both have their flaws. Jaxson Dart, specifically, you talk about his lack of attention under center, and there were it still is a concern. Like, we saw Jaxson Dart through 2 days having trouble getting under center and fumbling with the ball.
What do you have? 3 fumbles on Tuesday's practice?
Yes, and I think it's like 4 overall. So there are actual concerns here with him that make him. But then again, Quinn Ewers also has his flaws, and I think once again, it's just that when you get to the draft and these quarterbacks that are going to go later come up, all it takes is one coach to say, that's my guy. I can fix him. That kind of energy, and that's where they end up going.
I think the argument for Quinn is time spent in pro system, success, production. I think the injuries. I have a hard time looking at Quinn Ewers and thinking that he is a high level NFL quarterback. But he reminds, Chase Daniel's not a good comp because Chase Daniel out of Missouri was very undersized, but just a good arm, good reads, lots of pro potential, lots of pro experience in a pro system at Missouri at the time. Never a starting quarterback, but like a backup for how many years in the NFL? Like 10 years? Yes. Chase Daniel made a ton of money in the NFL, not playing football. I think Quinn Ewers and Jaxson Dart could be those kinds of guys. I would have Ewers at 3. I don't think he's a second-round pick. I think maybe late second, early third. I'm with you on the gap. I think that's a good point, that you got the 2 guys probably going first round. There's going to be a tax on the position that's going to bring them up the board. What happens if Quinn Ewers is like mid-third round? Jalen, Milroe, Jaxson Dart are all right there. I would not be surprised if there's a whole second round without a quarterback.
And, you talk about, the SEC quarterbacks, but then there's also another one that I think is an intriguing prospect in Will Howard. How does he fit into all of this, right? If you think Will Howard is up there as well, not in the SEC, but certainly has a lot of good things on tape during that playoff run that makes me intrigued. And I really wish he would have been here at the Senior Bowl, because I think he would have blown Milroe and Dart out of the water this week. Just getting that. So? I think so. Side by
side
got
comparison. He's got more of an NFL frame, honestly. Yes. Riley Leonard has an NFL frame. He's a little skinny for my taste, but
a skinny boy,
but he's a tall dude. And the problem with him is that he wasn't really good at throwing the football in college. Like, very good player, very good leader. I don't see NFL talent. Do you think Hennigan out of Memphis has NFL ability? I don't know.
I think he's an interesting project you take in the 7th round.
All right,
you have on your roster.
So I know this has been a long time since you asked the question, and we do appreciate all you guys. So if you want to jump into the comments, please ask questions. And of course, Sinkers Beverages and ML Rose are great sponsors. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. However, which quarterback has looked the best so far? This is an easy answer, and I told you guys on Monday this was going to happen. Tyler Shuck is the best quarterback in this event in Mobile. I don't know if he's better than Will Howard. He's certainly not better than the 2 guys in the first round. But Tyler Shuck, at his size, 6'3", almost 6'4", 220, 225. He can run. He's athletic. He has shown the arm strength the entire first 2 days of practice. He's making throws across his body, against the body, out of the pocket, inside the pocket. One of the things that the Titans coaching staff and front office talked to us about here is trying to, and this is about Ward and Sanders, obviously, getting into the personality and getting into who they are and what makes them tick and how they interact with people and their psychology and all this other stuff. Shuck looks very comfortable around a bunch of people he doesn't know in an offense that he's being thrown into. He looks like the guy who's kind of going and getting other players riled up. He's going to support his teammates. People are reacting. He looks calm and composed in sort of a tricky situation that the Senior Bowl presents. I think Tyler Shuck is by far the best quarterback that's here. Now, or at least, how about this? He's had by far the best week. Is he a better player than Jaxson Dart? I don't know. I think he's a more pro prospect than Jaxson Dart. He never was healthy in college. He went from Oregon to Texas Tech to Louisville. He never was healthy. And if he stays healthy, I think he can be an NFL player. I don't know if he's a starter or a star, but I think he's going to be in the NFL. I think he went from 6th round pick to like 3rd round pick this week in 2 days.
Yeah. I mean, he at least was, there's a difference between being the best here and being the most consistent. I
That's
think
true.
Tyler Shuck has been the most consistent quarterback here, which is something I think also really matters in like you were saying, having to go up in a brand new offense with players you have never thrown to against, a different flavor of defensive back and defender every single time. He has looked the best out of all of them. Now, there still have been a lot of flaws. There have been a lot of missed, poorly timed throws from all these quarterbacks, Shuck included. But for my money's worth, he has been the guy, like you said, the one that has been the most consistent and reliable this go around.
Any other quarterbacks? Dylan Gabriel, not an NFL player. Great college quarterback, not an NFL player.
No, I today was pretty damning for me on Dylan Gabriel. Not a guy. I mean, will he get drafted? Probably.
I think so.
He's got 6th, 7th round potential on him. I think, but like that's the ceiling, I would say.
Yeah. All right, D. Good. Is it crazy for me to say, but the more I watch a guy like Ariante Ursary, the more I think Bill Callahan will turn that dude into a stud, which is a perfect transitionary comment from our boy D. Good, of course, as we start to look at some of the positions that are important to the Tennessee Titans and just in general that are here. I want to get to I wasn't going to go offensive line first, but because D. Good jumped in the comments and you're here, we'll give you some love. Offensive line, I think Ursary's been a great one. So clearly a position of need. By the way, for those who are SEC fans listening, lots of conversation about the defensive line coming up. So just stay tuned for that. But I think what's interesting about Ursary and the offensive line position is where they project. Are they tackles? Are they guards? Are they interior? Can they swing right, left? We don't know about this. Ursary, though, has had two really good days of practice. So JT, at that position, what's the top story for the offensive line class here in Mobile?
How far does that versatility go? Obviously, with guys like Ursary, with guys like Anthony Belton, with guys like Gray Zabel, with guys like Emory Jones. What is the at least for the Titans and for some of these teams? Are they truly going to project at the inside or outside? It's a class that has maybe one or two guys at the top that are they're going to be the top tackles, and they're going to play tackle. And then after you get past that, it's a really big gray area right now where, teams project whether they are a guard or a tackle. Guys like Ursary and Anthony Belton out of NC State, I think, for my money's worth, have proven this week that they deserve their shot at tackle. And I don't think it's out of the question, like D. Good says, that if Bill Callahan gets his hand on a guy like this, we just saw Bill Callahan do this last year with J.C. Latham. J.C. Latham playing right tackle at Alabama, gets switched over to the left side. Anthony Belton, Ursary, both played on the left tackle side. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to do the same thing with him. Now, I will say, Ursary was still continuing to play a lot on the left side of the line today. Anthony Belton, however, moved over to the right side and was getting some run over there, which I don't think is not nothing for these guys. And so if I had to pick right now out of the offensive tackles, Titans specific, the guy that probably projects to be the most consistent from day one on the right side would probably be an Anthony Belton, and he's kind of right sitting around that 35 to 65 consensus board rating. Like, he's going to be in that area. So whether they decide to use the 35th overall pick on a guy like Belton, we'll have to see, but there's going to be a lot of options there.
I don't know if I'd be looking at Belton at 35, but I want to ask you this. And I was talking to Stoney, by the way, shout out to our guy, Stoney Keeley, who's not feeling great right now. So we hope he's feeling better. And I'll try to channel my inner big man watching big man do ball things. I was talking with him about this. Like, if you're going to grade out these tackles, like Josh Connerly, Brinker had already said this, Connerly, I do think Connerly's the best offensive lineman here. I think Ursary, yes. Stoney said this about like having some questions about watching the tape with him. But when he got here, I think Ursary's impressed Stoney. And I agree. I think he's been better than I expected. And he looks like, he and I were talking during practice today, looks like a true tackle. Now, here's the question that I asked him. Does the left-right thing even matter? Because Latham had that whole thing, as you alluded to. And here's the deal. It's not like you go from, like, let's use the Madden rating system here. It's not like you're going to go from like a 94 as a tackle, switch sides, and all of a sudden be like a 74. right? Like you might be a
Yes.
little bit better at one side or the other. You might be a 92 as a left tackle and an 88 as a right tackle, or vice versa. So I don't think the change, like if you are the Titans or any other team and you like Ariante Ursary as a tackle and you think he can play, I think he can play either side. I guess there's a player out there that's just incapable of like kicking back with like the left foot or something. I don't know. But I feel like there's a lot of similar skills. And if you can do one, you can probably do the other one almost as good. And in the Titans case, I think they just need to find a tackle who can freaking block people, most importantly. And if that's an 87 instead of a 92, and you get him in the second round and he happens to play right tackle, even though he's better at left or vice versa, I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like we can make too much of the side of this. I think whether or not you can play outside against NFL's pass rushers is still way more important, because I like a lot of these offensive linemen, but a lot of them are going to play inside, which the Titans also could use.
I was about to say, as much as we could get Bill Callahan to get his hands on one of these offensive tackles, there's very much the same argument that Bill Callahan could get one of these guards. And Gray Zabel comes to mind, who, once again, I think he's only lost one-on-one rep.
He's been maybe the best player in camp,
which is like at the Senior Bowl, which is kind of funny because, you know, you talk about all these guys like last year, like Jackson Powers-Johnson out of Oregon, I believe, had an insane first day of the combine and then was done. Or not the combine, but the Senior Bowl, and he was done. Like, he went to Oregon, so like people know him. Like, Gray Zabel goes to North Dakota State University. I might still be banging the table here to be like, you're done. Like, we've seen all we need to this week against even higher elevated talent than he was playing against at North Dakota State. So he's been absolute nails. Now, will he be available for the Titans in the second round? Maybe. It depends how high his, the rest of his draft kind of schedule goes throughout this process. But there's still that same conversation. Like, if you draft, obviously with only having 2 picks in the top 100, you draft a tackle at 35, you still have a right guard hole to fill because you do not have one on the roster right now.
Well, and a lot of this depends on how they view the puzzle in free agency. If they're going to go after Trey Smith and they're going to focus on tackle skills, I think at this stage you need to focus on getting the best. I think because the offensive line class is so good in that like 20 to 70 range, a lot of good late first, second, third round picks. A lot of them are going to be interior players. And I think if at that point at 35, you can trade back to 40 or 45 and you can get a really great guard and then go invest maybe a little bit in free agency at tackle, that still makes your tackle better if the guard position has been solved. Also, some of these guys we've seen Zabel, we've seen Wyatt Millam also play center as well. So if you want to have a succession plan behind a guy, Lloyd Cushenberry, having a guy that can switch around and be an option 3 years from now at center also is worth investing in as well. There's a lot of other guys that aren't here. Donovan Jackson's a really good one. Yes. Tyler Booker's a really good one. Yes. There's a lot of guys that are going to be right in that range. Although our boy Savanea has not necessarily had a great couple of days.
No.
But there's a lot of guys that are right in that range.
But he also was getting reps at right tackle today. So
okay, that's good. So again, I think the story is there's a lot of good quality depth. I think the guys who have cemented themselves are Connerly and Ursary. I think Gray Zabel probably, if you were doing those fake mock drafts for a while coming into the week, I played around with him last weekend. He was going like outside of the top 100.
Yeah.
And that's just nonsense. And I think he's gone from, I would say, early third round pick the start of the week to late first.
Yes.
Is where I think he's at. Every scout, everyone is buzzing about, that North Dakota State kid, or is that Zabel kid? Like, he is so polished, great hands, great strength, mirrors really well. He goes left and right well. I think he could be a center. So.
It's the same thing that happened with the other most recent North Dakota State product, Cody Mock, 2 years ago. Same thing. He comes into the Senior Bowl as this, a prospect in the mid 100s, according to the consensus board, and then 1 week in Mobile sends him all the way back up into the first round, and that's something that happened. I will say one more guy, not to get too into the weeds on the Senior Bowl stuff, but Clay Webb out of Jacksonville State.
We're going real deep now. Right?
216th on the consensus board. He's put some good stuff on tape this week at the Senior Bowl. obviously the Titans have a lot of late round picks. I don't expect him to be rising up a bunch, but he has shown some good things, especially going up against some of those SEC defenders, Shamar Stewart and the likes like that this week. And he's been holding his own, which is, I think, really impressive. So he's a guy I think I'm also going to be watching out for. Especially as we get into the, later into the draft cycle, when I do my do and do not for each pick for the Titans, he's going to be one of my guys that I'm pounding the table for.
Ross says, was hoping the vibe here would get more Mardi Gras as the week went on. I'm a little disappointed. Look,
do you want me to go get stuff?
It's not over yet. It's not over yet. Yeah, I was going to grab those glasses. We got some masks over here. We can get more decorative and festive if you want. No problem with that. I can vamp a little bit and say thank you to our sponsors, Sinkers Beverages. Search Uber Eats and have the booze delivered directly to your house anywhere in Middle Tennessee, in Greater Nashville area. They'll send you, of course, the booze right to your house. Don't drink and drive, obviously, and make sure you sign up for the In Crowd as well. That is their sort of customer appreciation list there. You can they'll have all kinds of allocation drops for bourbon on Fridays and stuff. They'll have all kinds of great stuff for you. So make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages, as well as ML Rose, 6 great locations, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Elite Brisket, Elite Burgers. They know what to do with their cow. They know how to eat it. They know how to cook it. I promise you guys are going to have a great time. So check out both those great restaurants in Middle Tennessee. Is that better? Is that better, Ross? Do we appreciate that? Okay. Good. I'm going to get the golden cat face in a little bit when you guys hear from Mike Borgonzi, but we'll see. All right, so the offensive line. I do feel like second round, though, is the Titans' target for the offensive line. I feel like we'll get to this in a second. I feel like edge is their target in the first, and the offensive line in the second, maybe receiver in the second, and then offensive line in the third if they were to trade back and get an extra pick. So we'll see.
Yeah, it will depend on, once again, the quarterback.
No, we're going to decide right now. All right, let's go to the edge rushers here, because the defensive line was the number of SEC players. I was standing down there actually chatting with an SEC coach, watching all these SEC. There was at one point I was watching the drills, JT. It was a Tennessee defensive tackle. It was an Alabama defensive tackle, Timmy Smith, I believe, Norman Lott for Tennessee. It was T.J. Sanders for South Carolina. It was the 3 Ole Miss players, Jared Ivey, who's already gotten a shout out in the comments, and we had Princely,
Uman Mielen.
Good job, that was right on, Uman Mielen, and of course Walter Nolan might be the best defensive player here. It might be the best prospect here. Yeah. Full stop at every position. You got the 3 Texas A&M kids were supposed to be here. And Shamar Stewart's really the only one that's been doing anything.
Yeah, Nick Scorton pulled out right before the start, which is a recurring
terrible
theme.
method.
It's a recurring theme this week, which sucks. But he pulled out. I guess we didn't get really a reason why. But then not Shamar Stewart, but his teammate Shamar Turner pulled out because there was a report that came out by Ian Rappaport that said a rod in his leg that he got fixed didn't heal correctly, so he had to go set that. So that seems like it may or may not, help or hurt his job.
And then there was so that's like 8 or 9. Then there was Jaxson, the Florida kid, who did not necessarily look like big kid, but didn't necessarily look like an NFL like a superstar NFL player, a little gangly. Deion Walker for Kentucky was in that group, and this was like on one team. Didn't even include the other team, which had Landon Jackson was on the other team. But that group of defensive linemen was like, at first I was just going like, there's a Georgia kid that like doesn't register with Georgia people.
Yes.
And he's out there. It was just a really impressive group of defensive linemen. SEC, that's the thing they've been known for a very long time. I do think that if you're talking about, other than Mike Green, who's on the other team, who I think is probably the best pass rusher. So if you're a Titans fan, you're thinking Mike Green, edge, number 1 probably. In the Senior Bowl, in the Senior Bowl. Sorry, number 1 in the Senior Bowl at that position is what I meant to say. No, Zach says, do we know why Omar Norman Lott wasn't there today? I have not heard. I know that Josh Heupel was standing right there, and he was the one watching his player yesterday. So I don't know why he wouldn't be there today. I did not see that, Zach.
He certainly didn't do enough to.
No, I don't think he would. I mean, like, he's a very talkative player, very big personality, and he was doing a lot to get everybody hyped up, and he was working really hard. And I think he's very short compared to the other folks. Everyone's short compared to Deion Walker. He makes everybody look like a freaking middle schooler. Like, he was standing next to Walter Nolan, and Walter Nolan is, while he might be a bit undersized for how talented he is, he's a very good player. like I said, I think he might be the best football player at this event this week. Deion Walker made him look puny, and very rarely does a college program undersize the player. Almost always you overvalue him. I don't want to ask about the Titans in the defensive line position yet, but other than Mike Green, what's the story around the edge players for the Titans and around this class of guys?
You can just go into day 2 and say that Shamar Stewart, even past Mike Green, was the best guy out there today. Shamar
Better
Stewart,
than Mike Green.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to say that definitively, but there's an argument out there. Some of the things that Shamar Stewart was doing against Emory Jones today where it was scrappy. It was a little dirty. It was like we finally got some sparks flying in that second practice, because full transparency, this may just be a coaching thing or decision, but like the first practice feels for the national team feels so good because like you got music in the background. It's the first thing of the day. I don't know. You're feeling good. And then they just, maybe this is a coaching decision, but they cut the music for the second practice. So you're just sitting there in silence watching them practice. I don't know.
It was dead on Tuesday. It felt, the energy levels were low.
Yes.
I shouldn't say dead. The energy levels were lower for sure.
But then again, like the practice started off in this for the second portion again today, and there needed to be some juice, and Shamar Stewart brought the juice today. There's one rep out there where he uses his play strength and his speed to absolutely just bulldoze past Emory Jones. He gets to Seth Hennigan and is able to strip sack him before he even makes it to like the second part of his progression on that play. Was super impressive. But then Emory Jones came back and may have been a little bit of a hold, but puts him on the ground and stands over him and does one of these things. So like they were playing scrappy today, but Shamar Stewart,
LSU and A&M, they hate each other.
Yeah,
which I love. I think is great, by the way. Emory Jones is somebody we didn't talk about. We should have talked about him. So
well,
maybe not.
We don't have to talk about the LSU.
Why don't you get into the frame here, big guy?
But Shamar Stewart is a guy that, when watching it, you can go back and look at some of his tape this year, specifically against South Carolina. I was looking to see that powerful bull rush be on display, something that I hadn't seen a lot of on his tape. He's a great edge at setting the edge in runs and making sure mobile quarterbacks like Lenora Salas doesn't get outside of the pocket or get to the edge of the field. But I was missing out on some of those more powerful bull rushes, and we certainly saw those today. He was one of my favorite guys, and
what was his measurables? Because he's massive. What did the Senior Bowl do? I'm putting you on the spot here, but Stewart is. I agree. I wanted to see. I think he had a lot to prove this week. I think he came into this with a lot of talent, great size, a lot of upside, but that Texas A&M defensive line and that front seven, there's a lot of folks that were doing a lot of work for that group, and he has a lot of talent. I think he needed to prove himself when he got here, and I think you're starting to see a lot of that out of him this week. So I think this is a guy that goes from mid-second to late first this week.
Yeah,
maybe?
I mean 6'5", 281, kind of exactly.
Okay, so that
for his size and what the power he plays with, I think that's gonna get the job done.
Do you want him in a pure edge outside backer 3-4 hand in the dirt guy, or is he more of a defensive end like that 7, 8, 9 tech? Like where like is he Danico Autry, or is he like a true pass rusher?
That's the comp for me, is Danico Autry. There's a lot of that to his game that I really do like, both from a draft perspective and for the Titans specifically. He's a guy that, like you said, there's so much other talent on that defensive line. Nick Scorton is a guy who was supposed to be here. We could have seen the kind of.
I think he's the best one on that out of A&M.
Yes, and it kind of harkens back to last year with Texas between Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. There were thoughts about, hey, is a lot of the production we're seeing out of this guy or vice versa, because you have the other guy next to him. And in this case, there's a trio of guys who have things going for him.
Yep.
And so that's why, just like Tavondre Sweat last year, when you see the power, you just kind of have you either take it or leave it. And for me, I'm taking it.
So you like him as a target at 35, hypothetically?
Yes,
in theory. I'm not saying like they do anything at 1 or 10 or whatever, but I just mean he's a guy that Titans fans need to pay attention to.
Yes.
Ed Henry says, I liked your article, Brandon. He corrected himself. To me, if you're not convicted early on the quarterback, let me make sure I'm reading this. To me, if you're not convinced early, not sure how quarterback can be pick number 1. I tend to agree with that, and honestly, we'll get to this in a minute. I'll save it because you'll hear from Mike Borgonzi on sort of that exact issue, and then JT had a question about trading back, and so we'll talk with Borgonzi. We'll hear from him in just a second, a little bit later on. I think the edge class, and I think I've heard you say this, that it's so deep that you like going later, and my argument is the best edge players generally come pretty high in the draft, and that they're almost guaranteed to be very good if you can get them in the top 10. If you can't get Carter because you've traded back, I still think the Titans need to look at edge. If it's 3, if it's 6, if it's 7, if it's 10 or 12, you've got James Pierce, you've got Micah Williams. I think Nick Scordon. I think Shamar Stewart's now moving up the board. I think Mike Green, how thick. I mean, he destroyed. Was it Connerly today?
Yes.
Destroyed Josh Connerly, who might be the best tackle in this class, not named Josh Simmons. And just, I mean, built like a brick shit house. Like he's awesome. And
the way I was going to say it on Mike Green real quick.
Yeah, go
is
for
that when we said it on our show yesterday, he's built like a brick house that can somehow still bend. Like he shouldn't be able to bend around the edge like he does.
Yeah.
And with that power and that 1-2 combo, for me, it's a no doubter right now that he is around maybe that 25 to 32 mark in this draft class.
I think he's moving up. I could see them both creeping into the top 20 or that 18 to 25 range as well. But again, if you're a Titans fan, that gives you options to continually move back if that's what they want to do to stockpile a bunch of picks. We'll see. Mm-hmm. But I just rattled off a bunch of names. Didn't even say Jalen Carter, by the way. Rattled off a bunch of names that are like top 15 players. If you're suggesting that there's another good 3, 4, 5 guys that are available in that late first round, then it gives you a lot of freedom to either come up from 35 or go back even further. Let's bring up the Ole Miss guys because somebody mentioned in the comments there about Jared Ivey. I know you came in loving Jared Ivey. I came in loving Princely Umanmielen. I will say I thought they were a little gangly, like a little I don't know what the right word is, like the body control could have been a little bit better on day one. I thought they were better today. Ivy is thicker than I expected to see. Princely's a little bit longer, rangier. Princely's graded out a little bit higher. I think Princely's the better player. I had him graded out like kind of as a 30, 31, 32 overall on the board. I don't know if I might move him down a few spots after the last couple of days. But to your point about depth, I think both those guys are very good targets for anybody picking second, third round and looking for a depth edge piece.
Yeah, and this is where it's a great counterpoint to a lot of what we're saying, right? We can watch what they're doing here this week, but at the end of the day, the tape that they've put out there already against, throughout their careers is going to be king. And so, with those guys, they may not have the best week like a Princely Umanmielen or Jared Ivey, but there still are things to like. And I think, even if they haven't been the biggest bright spot this week, they still have been productive for a reason. And I think they're still going to be top 100 picks when all is said and done.
Do you think, okay, just broadly, did they come into this as Princely as a second round pick and Ivy as a third or fourth?
Yes.
Is that about right?
Yeah.
And they're probably still a second and a third or fourth. Yeah. I tend to agree with that. Here's the thing that's really interesting to me, because I think this class is absolutely loaded with defensive linemen, more pure interior defensive linemen. We're not going to see some of those guys here. We're not going to see Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. We're not going to see Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. We're not going to see Brandon Graham. No, why am I? Mason Graham. Mason Graham. Yeah. So we're not going to see a lot of the elite guys. I think Walter Nolan is as Nick Suss said on the show on Monday, is a top 10 pick. I agree with that. Maybe top 15 for sure. I think Deion Walker made himself some money because, again, Kentucky was actually lowered his height and weight on their website, which makes no sense. But I think that's a guy that absolutely is going to be now that everything they're doing is about revenue in the NFL, you're seeing Deion Walker turn the switch. I think he gave a coach a concussion. I'm not even kidding. He was driving. They were doing like a simple kind of get off drill where you hold the pad, and I was standing 5 feet away, and this coach he went straight back on his ass. And it's one of those where you worry about the head snapping back and hitting the ground. The hat flies off, the lanyard flies off. Everybody's like, whoa, you okay? He got up, didn't laugh, didn't smile, wasn't upset, was nothing, because I was looking at his eyes and it didn't look like he knew where he was. And it's because Deion Walker is just a monstrosity. Yeah. Would you be willing to this is the Jeffrey Simmons question.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Which is, are there guys that are good enough in this class that you feel comfortable with turning a page for the Titans and sort of starting a new generation with Sweat? Like, can you imagine Walker and Sweat next to each other? That's an insane amount of human being to try to block and try to run around or run through. And Simmons is the one guy you could trade and get a bunch of pieces, get some draft picks and get younger. I don't know. It's worth considering.
Yeah, and that's where once again it comes in, right? It feels like Jeffrey Simmons' best years are behind him, and how much when you're talking about the life cycle of the Tennessee Titans and what they want to do: draft, develop, and retain. It feels like we're reaching the end of that cycle with Jeffrey Simmons, where they drafted him, they developed him, and they retained him. We're getting to the end of that contract.
You're not going to do third contract.
Yeah, and it feels like if there is a spot, nudge, nudge, New England, where he could probably make a fit, and you want to truly make this into the Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi system of draft, develop, and retain. Getting a guy, one of those guys, Nolan or Walker, are the guys that I think would be deadly against along with Tavondre Sweat.
Can you imagine the size, just the sheer size. Rosh says, I think it depends. I think depends too much on the other options unless you're willing to just have a solid but clearly defined ceiling with Darnold, Ward, and Sanders. Offer more than anyone else that's available. I talking about quarterbacks there. Of course, I agree. And thank you again. If I didn't say thank you to Ed for the comment about the article, I do appreciate that. I know you've got some written stuff that you're putting up here soon as well. As Stoney would say, Walker and Sweat banging other men would be great. Love it, Logan. So I do think that's worth asking. Wide receiver. How about wide receiver? Let's talk about that position because that's the other one that the Titans are looking at. I do think there's pretty clear top 3 in the first round if the Titans are going to go. I think we know that Burden, McMillan, and Egbuka are their top choices there in the first 20. I think Trey Harris is an opportunity at 35 potentially. I don't know how you feel about that. But the guys that are here, none of them are really graded that high in terms of first-round talent. But I think there's a lot of guys that were in that third, fourth range that might have worked their way into the second round. What's the biggest story for you at wide receiver this week so far?
It's, size doesn't mean everything.
Oh,
and that's with one of the biggest standouts for me is Tez Johnson out of Oregon. He, less than 165 pounds. I think he weighed in at 156 this week. Even tinier than a guy like Tank Dell. But when you watch this guy move,
it's very Ridley in his fluidity.
Yes,
his first 3 steps feel like Calvin Ridley. It's very smooth,
and that's exactly how he's able to kind of get away with not having the physicality against these corners who are bigger than him. The first 3 steps already gets him enough separation where he can just take off with his speed, and I think that's something. His size is going to limit how high he can go. I really do think, just like a Tank Dell, he's probably a fringe top 100 player because of that size. You just can't bank. You can't spend that type of capital on someone who weighs less than 160 pounds, or even if he does weigh what he says he does. That's one I think that is going to be really fascinating to watch as we continue.
It is hard not to notice Tez Johnson as the most explosive player in that group.
Yes,
just kind of easy to point out. Logan says, does he look like a child out there? I don't think so, because the guys he's running with are Xavier Restrepo, Jalen Lane out of Virginia Tech, Jalen Noel out of Iowa State, who we're going to talk about in a second. A lot of small receivers have been among the better receivers that are here. The big guy, if you wanted to look at like the Savion Williams types player, he's not here. He also,
that's the
pull-out method.
The other big one was, we could have had a nice comparison, but the only other big body receiver right now that I feel like is here is like Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, and our other 2 big body ones, Savion Williams and Alec Ayuman are just not here.
I love Ayuman. I think the kid out of Stanford. I think that Higgins is a nice late round player, but I think he's just Nick Westbrook-Akine. Like, I think that, but Westbrook-Akine is bigger, stronger, like more professional. I mean, I just think you just sign NWI if that's what you're going to do. Ramrod says Matthew Golden moved too high. I think Matthew Golden hype is a little out of control, honestly. I think he's a really good player. I think he's fast, but I think the going from like 60 to 28, I think is, I don't know why that's happening right now.
It all depends on what you think of the quarterback that was throwing him the ball. I
Well,
think.
that may be true. I don't think that's not unfair. So it's not about it's not about the size. It's about the release off the line of scrimmage. Is what we're talking about. I got to talk about Jalen Noel because he's the guy on Monday with you and Nick. I said this is going to be a Tennessee Titan. He was kind of coming in like early third round grade. I think he's done nothing but improve his stock this week. The difference between him and these other guys, he is like almost 200 pounds. Like this is a guy who can handle the beating. They play him outside. They're throwing him deep routes. I just think he is a total gamer in the NFL. He's physically strong, great hands, productive. I think he's going to test as like a 4.5, 4.4 guy at the combine. He's got the speed. Extremely well-coached players come out of Iowa State. I love Jalen Noel, and I think there's a very good chance that the Titans are targeting him if they have a third-round pick or if they move back in the second. I don't know if he's worth it at 35. In fact, I don't think I would do that at 35.
I would not either, considering maybe the value that'll be around there, like Ayumanor, or is it Ayumanor?
I say Ayumanor, which is that little Spanish. You say Princely's last name, and I'll say Alex's last name.
Alex,
he's a big dude. Ayumanor.
And then Savion Williams could be around there. Matthew Golden could be around there.
I love Trey Harris.
Trey Harris could be around there, but and we'll get to this with what Mike Borgonzi had to say when I asked. We're talking about so much talent that feels like it's right in the dead zone of the Titans, that they just simply don't have a pick. And so with the Senior Bowl, this has been a team, even though it wasn't necessarily Mike Borgonzi, but Chad Brinker was a part of it. Eight Senior Bowl players picked in the last 2 years for the Tennessee Titans. It does matter to this team when they come out here. They find a lot of their homegrown talent and try to develop through a thing like the Senior Bowl. And so when you don't have the capital in the spot where the Senior Bowl talent this year is going to be the richest, it creates a problem.
I tend to agree. That's why I think trading down is the way to go here. Logan says, who do we disagree the most on thus far from the Senior Bowl? You and I? I don't know. I mean, everybody I liked that you guys didn't like has been so good this week that in all seriousness, I don't. So Ty Felton, Stoney's really big on Ty Felton. I don't have an opinion anti enough to be like against you guys on that. I trust both of you on him. I have not had a chance to see him too much. I probably, what the one that I would say is like my biggest, like that I just was wrong. Like I came in really interested in Landon Jaxson, and I just am not anymore. Like I think he might be a solid third round player, but like
Landon Jackson's been so interesting to me because the first day was super rough, but then again, like the size and the physical tools in the right scheme with the right coaching could produce, just so much surplus value on that. And so I'm we got kind of slapped in the face with Landon Jackson's performance yesterday, but I've come back around on the idea that I think that there's still a player worth taking in the top maybe 50.
Were you big on Xavier Restrepo?
I am. I am.
So maybe that might be one, because I never really loved the Restrepo pick, and it doesn't sound like he's a guy that's made a bunch of ground up this week. But I still like, you can get him in the 5th round. I think great hands, special teamer. Like I think he could be a productive player.
I mean, hey. Listen, for a Titans team that still needs a kick/punt returner.
Well, they're going to draft Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter. There you go. Xavier Restrepo would be super nice in those late rounds. I just think his hands ability and what he can do with his feet at the point of the catch, where he can contort his body and really get his hands in the right spot at all the time. Is something that the team is really, really going to like.
Jalen Lane had a really good day, number 1. What do you think about day number 2 with Jalen Lane? Anything there?
Not as explosive. I think a guy like Jalen Noel really stole the show today. But Lane still, I think, maybe not the best size that you want in a wide receiver. Definitely looks a little misshapen out there, in my opinion, for a wide receiver.
Yeah, no, it's like top heavy almost.
Yeah, and
like
maybe that's
pads.
just because all the other
it's because the ACC doesn't put on cool pads.
Yeah, fair enough. And like the wide receivers are all wearing super sexy numbers like 5 and 10 and 17 and 15, and then he's out there with 83. Maybe that's why I think that. But
83 is such a boring number these days. Tyler Boyd.
Exactly. But he seemed like a guy that I think there's still a lot of good things. Downfield verticality is something that he offers that maybe these other guys we're talking about don't strive in or excel in. He's been really impressive in the way he's able to make a move and then make that next move and accelerate down the field.
A couple questions here. Team Ramrod says, I really like Jalen Royals if they can get a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick. Are you on board with that?
I like Jalen Royals. He has been solid, I would say. He hasn't flashed maybe the way, and there have been talks about how he was injured towards the end of last season, still working through that. So are we seeing the most potential out of him? Maybe not, but he's done some good things.
Ed Henry says, would you be surprised if they came away with 3 edge players in this draft class? I think based on the number of picks they have currently, 3 is too many, but 2, not out of the question at all.
If they were going to take 3 players of the same position in this draft class, I think it would be on the offensive line.
Ooh, really?
I think so.
Is Harold Landry still on the team? Because if they don't have Harold Landry, they don't have like a starter.
You could roll with Abdul Carter and
well, yes, Abdul Carter would be great, but I don't know if you got to find some answers and some depth there at that position, which is why I was interested to see players like Landon Jackson, because I was like, oh, he could be a nice like depth piece, contributor, rotational piece, 2nd, 3rd round. And I don't know if I'm there yet with him either. So Andrew says extremely deep D-line draft, very shallow O-line draft. I don't know about that. It depends. I think it's shallow O-tackle. It's shallow compared to last year at tackle when they had 6 or 7 guys that graded out top 20.
We were talking about this, right? Like, we really, given this offensive tackle class right now, whether you want Simmons or Connerly to be your number 1, we weren't really putting them anywhere above like Fatanu or Fuaga. Like that's where they were. So you still had Latham, you still had Alt, you still had Fashanu, and then like Fuaga.
You had the kid out of Georgia. You got the
Amarius Mims
out of Georgia. You get the kid out of Oklahoma.
Tyler Guyton. I honestly,
Jordan Morgan was a 1st-round pick last year.
I would put, going back through that, I would put Connerly and Simmons in that Tyler Guyton range, Amarius Mims range.
Logan says, does a tackle go before 15?
Offensive tackle?
I think Simmons will go in that range. And I think Josh Connerly is a late teens. 20.
Does that mean Campbell falls really far?
I mean, is Will Campbell a true tackle? Like, I think he probably could be the best tackle, but like he might be the best offensive lineman. I don't know. Like Banks might also be the best offensive lineman, but we don't know exactly where people are going to play them. But yes, I agree that it's certainly. I think it is certainly like 5th or 6th. The best player here is 5th or 6th best tackle last year, I think, in this class. So I do think they take a bunch of them. I think that's more if you trade back, you got extra picks, you go 2nd and 3rd round with 2 guards or center. There are really good interior offensive linemen in this draft, but you can generally get them later. 3rd. Like you can get Donovan Jackson in the 3rd round, Tyler Booker in the 2nd, 3rd round. Like those are good players. So I do want to ask you one more thing about Tez Johnson and the receiving core. This is quick because I want to get to Borgonzi here. We do appreciate our sponsors and all you guys in the comment section. Thumbs up, notifications on, Hot Read Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing everywhere you get your podcast app. Send Stoney a tweet and ask him.
Ask him soon, buddy.
Well, I was gonna at first I was gonna say something to be nice, but now I'm kind of like just send him pictures of like seafood. Just like send him a picture of like shrimp. Send him a picture of crab, mussels, oysters. Just send him photos of seafood. Ask him if Frank Gore's a Hall of Famer. Yeah, Logan. We had that debate. I think that debate's been settled personally.
I think the debate was settled depending on who you asked.
The debate was clearly settled in my opinion.
As a bystander to that was there to.
We have sources.
In Chad Brinker's own words, break ties. Like I was the Chad Brinker breaking ties, and I didn't need to because it was set in stone.
I think Tennessee Titans coaching staff broke the ties. All right, so here I got one more thing about this is about the receivers, and it's quick. It's because Tez Johnson is small, so is Noel, so is Lane, so is Restrepo. A lot of these guys are pretty thin, small guys. I'm just curious if you think your appreciation for Tez Johnson, which I agree with, do you think that the game has gotten to a point where those players have more space to find success because we're more protective of receivers? Do you think that's going to continue to evolve like that? Do you think it matters that the Titans take a small guy or a slot guy or an outside guy or a big guy? Ridley kind of can do all of it. Westbrook-Akine, if they keep him, is taller. I think they just need a good football player, but where do you stand on all that?
It kind of goes back to the same scenario that a lot of us were having in the draft community last year with Ladd McConkey. Like, trust the talent and don't really worry about it. Now, Ladd McConkey still could totally break, but you know that the talent when you get him out there. Same thing with Tank Dell. You trusted that talent until it's broken twice now.
Well, and McConkey was like, I mean, he wasn't healthy all year.
Yeah,
I mean, he caught a shit ton of balls, but like he's banged
still
up a lot.
productive. And so while I agree with you, it's still why I come back to it that I have a hard time believing he breaks the top 100 because just kind of like the with Tank Dell, it was still he was in the 90s when he was drafted.
Quickly here, tight ends. Brian Callahan said it to us. He said this is a really impressive collection of tight ends. He didn't necessarily expect that. And Arroyo out of Miami has been very good. I came in saying I mentioned Ferguson on Monday, Terrence Ferguson. I really like that player. The kid out of Clemson. I can't even remember his name.
It's like a culmination of words.
It's like Curry Blossom game, but in a tight end form. All-time leading. He was like 6'5" measurements. I think there's some really good tight ends here. The Fannin, the kid out of Bowling Green, is here. I think there's some good tight ends that can do a little bit of everything. They're not a team that's in the market for a tight end early, but if they have extra picks or in the 4th or 5th round, they get one of these guys to fall. I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Callahan wants more pass-catching options. Running backs, a lot of good ones here. We mentioned that on Monday as well. If you're telling Brian Callahan and whoever's playing quarterback and Nick Coles that they can have more pass-catching options, it's just not going to be a true receiver. It's going to be a tight end or a running back. I would not be surprised. And by the way, Tajay Spears needs to stay healthy. Tony Pollard, not young. Another running back is not out of the question either.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one to swallow for me, given all the other positions we need.
No, 7th round. So it's so deep you could get him in the 6th or 7th round.
And for the SEC people out here, I'll just throw out, I think Trevor Etienne has had maybe the best hands of any running back here.
Woody Marks, better than Woody Marks?
It's close.
I love the Titans targeting a player like Woody Marks in like round 6 or 7. And then you solve your running back 3 problem. If Tajay's hurt, which he's been most of his career, you got another pass catcher in there. Yep. And Pollard, how many years is Pollard going to run 250 carries for 1,000 yards? A couple more? Like, it's not terrible to start thinking about that stuff. Okay, so lots of great stuff. I know Stoney will get back healthy, and you and him are tomorrow, correct? Okay, so Thursday after all the practices are over. Senior Bowl extravaganza.
Big summer blowout party.
Is that the Friday? Is that what's happening Friday?
Well, someone's already blowing something out. So.
Whoa. Again, tweet at Stoney Keeley. Just random don't put any words in it or just random photos of seafood, but like cooked. You know what I mean? Like not like in the water. All right. So we had a chance to talk with Mike Borgonzi. I know it's getting late here. We do appreciate our sponsors, Sinkers Beverages, ML Rose, and of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue as well. But here we had you want to set this up because you asked the question. There's a follow up in this little clip here where I ask about sort of some of the stuff I wrote about for PK. Why don't you set this up and toss to it here?
Yeah, the question that I asked him kind of along those lines of what I said earlier. This has been a team that has really targeted the Senior Bowl over the past couple of years, eight players selected in the last 2 years. We know that this is a Senior Bowl crop full of day 2 talent. You talk about having to want, as many top 100 picks as possible. You only have 2. So does that really, go into, does that reinforce the idea that trading back is the likeliest option for this team? And this is what Mike Borgonzi had to say about that.
That really depends on the situation we have. You're never going to pass up. You got a chance to take a good player. You're not going to pass that opportunity up. So that's really a strategy as you get into the draft and building those pockets on the board and see what's on the board and go through it. But we're never going to pass up a good player.
Based on all the tools you guys have, you got metrics, you got testing, you got interviews, all that stuff. Can you articulate, like, through all of that analysis, when like, this is the guy? Like, you talked about Mahomes having some flags or some good talent. Like, how do you articulate when you actually know finally that this is the guy you want?
Really, when you meet with them and get to ask them the questions that maybe you have for them, a big part of that process is sometimes bring them inside the building for the entire day. Whether it's an install situation with the quarterback. That's really how you get a lot of those questions answered. We have all these tests and, psychological tests, S2s, and, how they process. But the big thing is just really drilling down on the person, right? And then if there's flags that we have in terms of the mental part, we try to figure that out starting here. It's here, the combine, you're sitting with them, you're bringing them in the building to sit down. So this is like step 1 of the process right now.
That was Titans general manager Mike Borgonzi, and I've just realized what I look like for the first time. Is this enough for you guys? Is this enough? Here we go. Chateau de Marty. Let's party.
Chateau de Marty, and this is Squid Game. This is just Squid Game.
I'm only 4 episodes into the first season.
I've never
but
seen Squid Game.
it's very violent and dangerous, like Deion Walker. So Borgonzi there, I think, look, they're not gonna telegraph. I am, if you're reading between the lines here on everything Titans related, I'm gonna finish the show this way. I think it's fairly, I'm not saying it's obvious. I don't get any sense that they are looking to draft a player at 1. I get the sense that they want extra picks. They see value. Everything's on the table. They want to trade back. They know they need lots of help, and that neither of these 2 quarterbacks is the guy that they want. That's my feeling. That is not based on any conversations I had. I'm not sourcing that information. That's my feel. And it's sort of, maybe it's confirmation bias because that's what I thought they should do at the beginning. And if you're taking me seriously right now, I appreciate it. So thank you.
If I had to, what we've heard over the past couple of days from Titans coach and GM availability, along with just everything encompassing, like the it's like if this happens, then this will happen. If they think Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter is that player that you just can't pass up on, the generational talent that they talked about almost a week and a half ago when we were sitting down with Chad Brinker, then you draft him there. But there's not that much overwhelmingly consensus buzz that is the case. And so because of that, it does feel like to me, you try to trade out of this 101, pick up those picks, whether it is this year or next, and that's
my theory.
You go from there.
My theory is that if this draft, we talked about this with the Senior Bowl, and this is a great way to wrap this up a little bit because again, Borgonzi also talked a little bit about, like when I asked him how go read a PK's article, paulkarski.com. Of course, you can check that out. I'll have some more stuff up at the website there. And I do appreciate Borgonzi talking about how you got to sit down and talk to these guys. But Stoney and I think you and somebody else were talking about, if this is a mediocre Senior Bowl relative to good Senior Bowls, talent-wise, that the top of the draft is not as good as we've seen in the top of the draft in previous years, you could move down to 3, still get the piece you want. And I think it was, to Logan's point, you have to have a dance partner. I think there's plenty. I think there's 3. I think 2, 3.
I was talking to some people, some of my buddies over at 32 Beat Writers today. Like, it's not out of the possibility that there is a team like the Giants or the Raiders with Pete Carroll and this new and John Spytek going up to get Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders.
2, 3, 6, 7, which is Raiders, Jets, and then of course Browns and Giants. I think all of those are options for the Titans. 12 at the Cowboys, like all the way to 12, I think is on the table. I think what's interesting is you can move to 3 and still get your guy that you want at 1.1. You could still, but here's the thing. You don't have to, if you want to get the deal done to sweeten it to get the other team to come on board, what you say to them is, look, give us like a 4th round pick this year. We'll move down to 3. You get 1. You get your guy, Cam Ward. I get a 4th round pick, which is right around that top 100 range. Maybe it's a 3 if you can get greedy, but I want all the payment next year. I want a 1st and a 2nd next year and a 3rd this year. Like, don't be greedy this year because this draft class isn't that great. And if you're Callahan and Brinker, I know that you can't play like 3 years because you got to win now. But at the same time, if you're pitching this 2-year thing to Amy Adam Strunk about vision and growth and patience, which they've been much different about this offseason so far, get next year's draft class, load it up, get 4 picks in the top 40, add somebody in the 3rd this year, move down to 3 and still get your guy. Like, that is, to me, that's like, I totally see the strategy. The question is, if you're Brian Callahan, like, do you believe that you can get yourself back to this point next year?
Yeah.
I think they're back. I think they're all back next year. I think they have an extra year more than I thought.
Yeah. What was telling is that, like, not to get too philosophical about it, but when we talked to Chad Brinker and he says to us, to our face, Amy lets me speak for her on behalf of football operations and Burke Nihill on business operations. It feels like she's kind of taken a back seat in this thing.
I think so.
So with that, it kind of feels like if she's taking the back seat here and just finally being patient and waiting this out, they're going to get another year regardless.
I tend to agree. I should speak into the microphone. All right. Let's try one thing here. What happens if I do?
Top one.
What happens if I do this right here? Yes.
Ooh,
There we
sponsors.
There
Those are
we
great
go.
sponsors.
Sinkers Beverages, ML I should have done this a long time ago.
Probably.
JT, I apologize. There's your hot read skin right there. There you go. Senior Bowl, ML Sinkers Beverages. Make sure you check out Shotgun Willie's Barbecue as well. Please send pictures of cooked seafood to Stoney Keeley at Stoney Keeley.
And we'll discuss them
on
all on tomorrow's show. For all the hot read people out there, there may or may not be more taco pictures coming later today.
That's the plan tonight, right? Is
taco pictures.
We've had lots of,
we're going undercover and getting taco pictures tonight.
I think we've had some pretty good food.
Amazing food.
We've had some good food. We had a hanger steak last night.
Delicious.
We had lots of oysters. We've had some beverages as well. Uber Eats, search Sinkers Beverages. Have that booze delivered direct to your house. Definitely some Eyes Wide Shut vibes. I finally got the Jester hat on correctly there. I was wearing it incorrectly. I've never worn one before, but so bear with me. Anything else? Tell everybody else what you got coming up for all your stuff and Stoney stuff and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Just some more thoughts on what we talked about with Borgonzi over at stackingtheinbox.com. If you want to go check that out and subscribe over there. A lot more this draft cycle coming over at Stacking the Inbox. I have a video with former host of the Hot Read podcast, Easton Freeze, going a little bit even more in depth onto the wide receivers here at the Senior Bowl and how the Titans could potentially target some of them.
All right.
And
I don't want to. Logan's doubting your chance of getting Easton to eat a taco. Here's what I don't. I don't want a photo. I want slow-mo video.
We can
of like the.
Like I want the Easton. Listen, and he's not here to defend himself, but he said that tonight is the big night. So maybe I just got to buy him a few drinks, and then he's gonna stop being aware.
A few of you have asked, what do you do about quarterback? Look. We've heard from
Derek Carr.
That's what I think is going to happen also. We've heard from Borgonzi and from Brinker. They will attack that position relentlessly, no matter what it takes and no matter how they can do it. They're going to try to turn over every stone to do this. Just because Ward and Sanders are the only options doesn't mean you should take them and that they're the guys that are going to help your franchise win. This is a 10-year decision. You got to find the right guy. And if you have 4 draft picks, let's say in the top 40 next year, and you go get Carr for 2 years, and by the way, you suck again, you could get Arch Manning if he comes out at number 1, or you have enough to go up,
or you could get Drew Aller,
or you have enough to go up to the top 5 if you're not there already to add a piece like Drew Aller or somebody like that. So I think next year's draft class on the whole is better, and that's early, I know that, but on the whole, if it's better, you should stockpile next year's draft class because that could allow you to get the deal done this year because someone might be desperate enough to go get the quarterback, which I think is Cam Ward. I like Shedeur, but I think Cam Ward's the guy that if someone's coming up to get that first pick, I think they're getting it. I think they're taking Cam Ward. So
I could talk so much more about this, but we have like 80 days to do so.
Do.
I see why spend it all right now.
All right, I think that means JT's done talking to me. Hot Read Podcast, of course, make sure you check it out. Thumbs up on the new YouTube page, 440 Sports as well. We do appreciate all our great sponsors, Sinkers Beverages, ML and of course Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Thanks to all you guys who are in the comments, man. Seriously, you guys are great. We do appreciate all you guys. And there you go. Look what I got to do. I'm going to do this right here. Got to go back here,
Just press end shot.
and I'm going to go. Have a good one, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.